I'm a reporter at Fox 26. I've been in Houston for 16 years. I'm a lifelong Texan. I have an acute interest in reporting on children and adults with special needs. I come by that honestly. I have a 13-year-old son on the spectrum of autism, and his name is Garrett. Don't you know him? Through the course of my journey, our lives, my family's lives, changed in that once we got our diagnosis, we started meeting other parents. And I heard their stories and their issues and the challenges they were going through. And so, as a storyteller, I realized these stories weren't getting told. And so it has been part of my journey to try to chronicle the challenges that people face and the good things that happen as well as the bad. Now, what this is today is a listening session put together by two great organizations, the Our Family Network. We have today government officials, elected representatives, essentially doing their homework, listening to you. They want to hear your stories so they can make good decisions. And they can share that information with fellow lawmakers. Now, I know a lot of these people. You know, Senator Sylvia Garcia will fight for our children to the last breath of her body. Gene Wu, there's no one more progressive, no one more willing to stand up and fight for our kids and to fight against what is sometimes seen as a penny-wise, pound-foolish approach in state government. I think that's fair. And congratulations on the birth of your new child. Helen Cohen, she's always willing to go to bed. Our beloved Texas is 50th in the country when it comes to providing the resources for our kids, our adults. And you know, I'm just going to blatantly editorialize. I think that is a disgrace. But I know you all are fighting. But what I hope that you pull away today are stories that you can share with fellow policymakers, fellow lawmakers, because you've done the work. And I want you each to stand up now and identify yourself and your will.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Dr. Steve Day. I'm the Executive Director of the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDDs.
Hi, good morning. My name is Amanda Jones, and I'm with Harris County Office of Legislative Relations. I work representing Commissioners Court at the state legislature in areas of appropriations and health and human services.
Good morning. Buenos dias. I'm Sylvia Garcia. I'm a state senator for District 6, which is most of the east end, all the way to Pasadena, up toward Baytown, and includes Center City, Lincoln Park, a big chunk of Houston, and then goes back up to that toward areas that are already head by the viewers.
Hi, I'm Belinda Price, and I'm an aide for County Commissioner Steve Raddick. I'm his liaison to behavioral health, education, all those agencies and departments that other people don't really get to often. So I've been with the Commissioner for 27 years, and for all 27 years, those have been my departments, and I take great honor in representing them.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Ellen Cohn. I'm also the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Houston, so when the Mayor's not here or tied up, I'm the Mayor. And it's my pleasure to be here and to listen carefully to what you have to say.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Gilbert Peña from House District 144, but I'm also the father of a 27-year-old severely immobile child. And so some of the stories I'm going to tell this morning, they're going to surprise me because I've had to live them I have to live with him, especially when my son's younger. He's 27 years old now, and his mama's taking care of him when I come and do some of the events that I have been elected to attend. So I will fight tooth and nail for our children because I know what we parents have to go through, the disappointments. And so I'm here to hear some of your stories and hopefully take back to the house things that I can work on and help us, parents, be able to better provide for our children. Thank you for having me this morning.
Hi, Ben Rose. It is an honor and privilege to be here. Unlike all the other officials, I'm not elected. I'm the Democratic nominee for Texas House District 134, which is Central, Houston, Bel Air, Miami, Westview, River Oaks area, Montrose. And I'm excited to listen to everything that you all have to say. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, I'm Chris Banks. I'm Special Assistant to the Mayor on Government Relations, and I'm here to hear how we can be supportive of your legislative agenda. Morning, my name is Gene Wu. I'm the State Rep from House District 137, which is basically just right across the freeway. Ben, by the way, Ben is also a proud papa, a brand new proud papa. I'm a proud papa of 2 young boys, and I'm here to listen to your stories, and hopefully we can make some real changes for this whole state.
Okay. You know, Gene's wife is Maya Shea, one of my respected colleagues, and so when he hears a story, sometimes he tells her that she gets it out in here. Kind of like two of them. Hey, look, I'll start off by saying, look, Texas government has worked for my family in the sense that we're one of the few families that are on the Medicaid waiver. We get some great respite. Really helps. We also have the sadness that there are hundreds of thousands of families who should be on that. Texas government has failed my family in that my family has had to go to due process 2 times and has proven before a TEA hearing officer that my child was not getting the free and appropriate education that he is entitled to by law, that every Texas child is entitled to by law. The school district used my tax dollars to fight us. And then they used my tax dollars to take it to the 5th Circuit. Instead of working with us to try to get that educational plan that will work. Hundreds of thousands of parents face this challenge. And they are often dealing with school districts that will use a strategy of attrition. They will wear them down. And that's not the way our government is supposed to be. Anyway, I know you're eager to hear from everybody who's come. I'd like to call up Jacqueline Cruz.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for listening to us. Nothing like being the first one up. My name is Jacqueline Cruz Harris. I am a single parent. I have a 16-year-old with autism, and I have a 17-year-old with autism and ID, which used to be called hearing retardation. He's also nonverbal. He's a communication device to serve as his voice. So my sons were diagnosed just past age 2. So I've been in this environment for many, many years. And I tell people that my house is the spectrum because they are very different with their autism. We were placed on the interest list, the Medicaid waiver interest list in 2003. So I thought that was a good thing. I'm a responsible parent, doing everything I need to do to put my kids on this interest list. Somewhere along the way, it became a wait list of 11 and a half years because that's how long we were on this interest list to get services for 11 and a half years. So my 16-year-old son is very sports-oriented. He thinks that he's never going to see another girl in his life. and he really does well in school. And they each have different challenges, and it has been a challenge throughout the years. So one day in 2014 in December, it's about 2 weeks before Christmas, and I call it that fateful day, went to my mailbox, had 2 letters in there from dads, opened them up, and it was that their number had come up for the interest list. I was so happy. It was like the best day of my life. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. After waiting for 11 and a half years on this interest list, on this wait list, their names finally came up for services. And I was very happy about it. So then it became an issue for me of, okay, we're going to use this HCS slot that they've been granted to help them in the community, to be part of the community, because that's what I want for them. I want for them, and I want their services to work for them in the community. I'm not interested in having them in any other placement but in the community. So for me, working hard to help them to use the services from HCS to enhance their skills, to allow them to be able to be a part of the community was my first and only challenge at that point. Because I want them to help Houston to be an inclusive city. Okay, because that's what I'm looking for. I want them to be included just like anybody else. And having the HCS slot allows them to be able to do that. When they graduate from high school, they will get a job because they are very much employable. They will get a job and they will contribute to this city in the same manner, in the same way that I contribute to it. I want them to always be in the community because that's where they belong. That's where they can thrive. They can get an appointment like any other person. They will get a job like any other person. They will contribute to this city like any other person would do. And they can only do that if the services are provided to them in the community where they live. They're used to being in the community, around people that they live with. When we go out and we interact with people, that is helping them when they become adults to be responsible adults. So my hope is that you take with you that there are 2 kids on the autism spectrum in particular, my kids in particular, that will best be served in the community, okay? Not in a state-supported living home, in the community where they can thrive and they can actually be contributors in this society like anybody else. So please take that with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, how old are your children?
16 and 17.
Yeah, I hear all the time about transition, all the time. What ends up happening is our kids graduate from public schools to the couch, or worse. You're going to hear a little editorial today from talking. Okay. Some people think that my news stories are editorials. Next up, and please forgive me if I mispronounce this, Adrian and Havilah Walsh. Is that right? Perfect. Who's going to speak first? Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Havilah. I am 22 years old. I'm the youngest of 6 children. Without speech therapy, I would have a hard time to speak to it. In 2013, I graduated from King Creek High School. And they then went to PASS program at A&M. Whoop. I wanted to go to college, just like my other cousins. At A&M, I learned to do things on my own, like taxi, take the Aggie bus, taxi, and city bus. Like making new friends and doing laundry and doing homework. I felt good living in a home. I learned about helping others with disabilities by being a peer support professional. After I graduated from the PASS program, I helped Girl Scouts, camps, then YMCA after school with kids, then YMCA day camp with kids over the summer. And now I work at a coffee shop and make $7.25 and tips. I like to help others so much. I took me to China for 2 weeks to be a nanny for children with disabilities in a love orphanage. I hope I can change the world to support children with disabilities so they can change the world. Thank you.
Follow that story. It's just speaking out of my chest. I'm so proud of her. Well, I'm 8 years old, her mom. And so like the MasterCard commercial, I like to tell our story backwards. So before I drove our 21-year-old daughter with Down syndrome home from Texas A&M for Thanksgiving break on her birthday after doing her very first job interview, she graduated from her public high school with her peers, fully included with resource, math, and English, earning her letter jacket while on the high school swim team. I attended any transition conference I could find. There wasn't information for us after high school. DAR said they could not help me find a part-time job for her, but they did a really terrific job finding the job training that she received at the PASS program at A&M. Before moving up from public junior high, she had out-of-the-box thinking administrators and teachers that included her on the drill team and taught her the Pythagorean theorem. She had intermediate co-teachers that taught her to love science and history and fostered her curiosity with the world. Before receiving open-heart surgery at the age of 10, as a family, we researched and sought out every available therapy to benefit our child with an intellectual and developmental disability. She received ECI-funded speech therapy, partial out-of-our-pocket oral motor speech therapy, because insurance companies, they don't cover speech therapy, because clients have to have it first before they lose it. That's got to change. She received music therapy, targeted nutrition supplementation, horseback or hippotherapy that greatly benefited her speech and her physical core motor skills. So before she received the HCS waiver program funds at the age of 13, she was on the waiting list for 10 years. Because someone told us to get on the list at the age of 3. If her name was not annexed in with a lawsuit brought against the state of Texas for their lack in meeting the needs of families and children with disabilities, she may not have received all these many programs that have greatly benefited her. The other list I added her to was a class list, which I stayed on, even after receiving the HES funding, because I really was curious, how long would it really take for her to receive and come to the top of that class list? Well, just this summer, we received notification that her name had come to the top. This summer. You have been on that list nearly 20 years. And you have families waiting 20 years. And the services that they have lost because they were not able to afford the funding. Raising a child with special needs is exorbitant. We had 6 children. That alone is exorbitant. We had one parent income. I love staying at home with the kids. It was wonderful. And having a child with special needs added just to the expenses and finding those therapies that were going to benefit her and make her a place here in the community. We did deny class services because you can only be on one service at a time, but I wanted to know. We do have the HES funding. Because of the HES and the support of the people and organizations along the way, our daughter has been able to live a quality life in her community. It's because of her inclusion in the marketplace with minimum wage and more, she's gotten raises, that there's a positive image of the capabilities and contributions of individuals with disabilities. In conclusion, before I held her in my arms, overwhelmed with what I did not know about this child of ours that was born with Down syndrome, she was fashioned by the heart and the hand of God. She was destined to make her mark in this world, extra chromosome and all. Thank you for your time.
Next up, Christopher Williams.
Greetings. My name is Christopher Williams, and I live in Katy. Thank you for coming to the listening forum today. I work at Walgreens, stocking the shelves, filling the cooler, and operating the trash compactor. Taylor High School helped me get the job before I graduated from high school in 2010. I started working 4 hours, but after 2 weeks on the job, Walgreens wanted to cut my hours to 2 because they didn't think it would work out. But I got employment assistance from DARS to help me do my job. Really to help the Walgreens employees know how to work with me. After a month of help, I was offered 4 more hours. I only worked 8 hours a week for 5 years. I wanted to work more, but it was difficult trying for me to find another job because job interviews are hard for me. Then last year, I used my Medicaid waiver supported employment services with the summer house. The summer house helped me get a job. The summer house helped me get even more hours at Walgreens. Now I work 13 hours. On Wednesdays, I take a break and have my lunch. My boss said I am a good employee because I get to work on time and have good work ethic. I like working because I earn a paycheck. I use my money to buy things and do things just like you do. I buy things at H-E-B and go places like the movies or the German festival. I want to save my money to buy an RV so I can travel and sleep in it. When I started working 6 years ago, I made $7.25 per hour. Now I make $9. Now I make $9 per hour. Every year I get a raise. The people who live at the state supported living center in Richmond go to work in the workshop every day. I think they work more hours than I do. I don't think they make 25 cents an hour. The state employees that work there want a raise. I wonder when the last time the people with disabilities in the workshop get a raise. Would you work in your job without getting a raise? Would you work in your job for less than $1 per day? When I work and get paid, I contribute to Social Security and Medicare. That helps elderly people. Half of my monthly earnings reduces my monthly supplemental security income, or SSI. In the end, I still have more money than if I would if I only got SSI. In fact, that is what allows me to buy other things instead of just paying my room or board with my SSI. I wish more people understood that. I am lucky because my mom helps me keep track of reporting my income and managing my money. It is not easy for people with disabilities to do all the paperwork. It is not easy for people with disabilities to do all the paperwork that is involved in working, but it is worth it. I hope that when my mom is gone, that my Medicaid waiver will continue to help me with this. I really want to keep working. For many people with disabilities, they want to work in our community. They want to be contributing members like me. Please remember my story and make sure that all Texans who work are paid minimum wage like me. Thank you very much.
Once again, I may have trouble with Please join us now here. Jonah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jonah Abe, and I live in Houston, Texas. I graduated from Westside High School. I then attended the ACC VAST program downtown for 2 years. That stands for Vocational Assessment and Skills Training. During this time, I learned how to make new things, to add something to this world. I learned how to draw, how to cook, and also learned the transportation system. I also learned how to make new friends and how to manage money. I took job classes that taught me how to get the job on time, how to behave at a workplace, how to find a job. I want to get the job. I want to get the job because if I don't get the job, then I don't have anything. If I get a job that pays at least minimum wage, things that I want. Having a job makes me feel comfortable. I want to get a job at either Texas Thrift Store, Global Industries, or HEB. If I were to get a job at a thrift store or Goodwill, I would like to stock things. If I got a job at HEB, I would like to stack groceries, stock shelves. I like to work in the mornings for about 20 hours per week. I want to get a job soon. I like meeting people, and I can do this at my workplace. I can also meet customers and my coworkers too. I know that I would pay taxes and be a part of society, and this is important to me. I would like to live with friends when I am old. And it matters to me to have my own money for working at a job. Employment in a community that pays a real wage is very important to people with disabilities. Studies show that we want to work, but finding employment is very challenging. Senate Bill 1226 passed in 2013 and promotes employment for individuals with disabilities. As part of this bill, Texas also has employment for spouses. This means that employment is the first and preferred option for working age. Texans with disabilities, but we still have work to do. You can also help me and other people with disabilities by reaching out to the people in your district and encouraging them to hire people with disabilities. Small business owners and corporations should be made aware that we are ready to work and earn at least minimum wage. Please promote policies that support real pays for people like me. Thank you very much for your time today, for listening to my thoughts. I know that you have many issues you are trying to address, and I appreciate your consideration in making employment of people with disabilities a priority. Thank you.
We talk about bootstrapping a lot in our state, pulling ourselves from our bootstraps. That's all these families want to do. It's all these young Texans want to do, and they need help. You got to spend money to make money, and I think we just saw some proof of that. Next up, Melanie Peterson.
My husband is teaching his 36th year in Katy ISD. I am a special education job coach for Spring Branch who works directly with individuals with intellectual disabilities. We are lower middle income. I think that's a significant statement to me. Our son is on the Medicaid waiver wait list for housing. We're only about 3 years into that. He has been on this list for years, but I think what we've been told is we're about 10 plus to go. We are both near retirement age. We do not have money to private pay. Our journey to look for housing and work opportunities for her son has been long and difficult. We both have personal health issues and not a lot of family support. While looking for help, I often jokingly say, we're not really planning to live forever, so consider that we're very tenacious parents and advocates. But after years of really seeking help for our son, we're very tired. And I really need to say we're very tired. But our theme as a family this year is hope. We believe in hope. We believe in God, that He is with us. And we believe there are people out there that are willing to share that hope with us. Our son is a young adult with intellectual disabilities connected with autism. He has accompanying disorders that are equally as disabling, like obsessive-compulsive disorder and severe anxiety. The last few years has added a greater loss of functionality and intellectual ability, in part due to medication issues. To enable my husband and I to work, our son benefits from STAR Plus Medicaid with caregivers in our home from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. every workday. We're grateful for that. But I do have to say to you that he feels isolated. He feels trapped in the home, and his life has very little purpose. Meaningful structure is critical to well-being. We have made multiple trials of programs to bring social contact and purpose to our son's life through DARS, work trials, through a nonprofit work organization called HEART, through the dual diagnosis program here at the Harris Center. But but the work programs and housing options we have found do not meet our son's needs. In programs he has tried, our son could not understand why he had to be placed in these situations, nor could he understand how to connect with others in the program. His self-esteem was affected, and he became depressed. You see, he remembers himself as having more ability than he demonstrates now. That makes him in a kind of unique population. Those memories cannot be erased so that he will fit in with a program not designed to meet his needs. Our son is currently participating in the Coffee House, a program designed for individuals on one of the ranges of the autistic spectrum. Each day they talk about job skills and ways to prepare to get a job. Yet I have not yet seen strategic opportunity to practice job skills. Bringing in-house a small project-driven industry such as just assembly of Meals on Wheels bags or taking field trips out into the community to volunteer at places like the Houston Food Bank would be examples of simple yet essential first steps towards work experience. Then discussions about job readiness would be empowered with a life connection. However, when asked why industry was not sought, I was told that it would be a conflict of interest with, and forgive me here, I'm not a politician, I'm not an administrator. The Harris Center or state funding, I'm not sure. I feel strongly that it is time for Texas to think differently. We have pursued any informational contact we can find. 2 services appropriately offered to us by the Harris Center were not actually given due to shifting funds and reports. He was promised one-on-one psychotherapy because it becomes too anxious in group. He was also qualified to receive help in the community to gain coping skills for anxiety. After another year, these have not been started. We have not been able to find homes or supports that provide the right service for our son. Our realistic fear is that our son could become so depressed in environments that offer little appropriate programming for him that he might walk away or choose suicide. This is our greatest concern. The stress we deal with daily has taken a toll on our health, We fear that we will die or become unable to care for our son before resources become available. So, in spite of our own personal medical issues that make care more difficult, we keep him in our home with caregivers, waiting for a day when programming and services will improve. We also have come to a decision to begin to seek uprooting our family, our jobs, and our lives to move to a state that may have better resources. Though we are native Texans, we do not know how we can make such a life change at this time. From our journey's perspective, this is what I have received. Now, I'm not in all know, but this is my perception about resources in Texas. A biblical quote sums it up. For lack of vision, the people perish. Services that the Harris Center has offered in the past has lost funding. New vision is needed to meet rising needs, such as dual diagnosis, intellectual disability, along with mental health disabilities. Sometimes we must let go of our protocol, the way things are done, have been done, and think about new solutions. Are we aware that there are other states that do not have a waiting list for work programs and housing? There are some states that are doing a better job of thinking outside the box, trying new strategies, not a one-size-fits-all mentality. Work opportunities must be created that will provide meaning to the lives of individuals with intellectual disabilities. I could never say anything better than what I've heard right now today. As a job coach for individuals with these disabilities, I can confidently say, few people can do nothing. Given an opportunity, most people can do something and make a recognizable difference. Safe, appropriate, and creative housing opportunities are critical. We must form homes that are for unique populations rather than housing for all ages and disabilities. Throw them together. The wait list must go away. Please help us make the wait list go away. As a state, as a community, we are measured by how we care for our own. I agree with our moderator today. Help us remove the shame of being 50th in the nation for resources to help the intellectually disabled and those who also have mental illness. Those often go together. All who are the least able to speak for themselves. And please remember those families who are in the lower end of middle income and have paid into the system but are finding it very, very difficult to receive back. Thank you for standing with us as you vote and as you speak. I honor and applaud you for being here today. Thank you.
You're the second speaker to mention the Medicaid waiver list.
Yes.
What is the? Do you know why the waiting list is so long?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
I could only guess, but it is my understanding that funding for these services have been cut and cut again. Jobs have been cut and cut again. And can't speak from a political viewpoint, but when I do ask for help, that is what I'm told.
Gene Steve's going to help us out.
Is that list through the
Representative
state?
Representative, my understanding that the Medicaid waiver that's being referenced that provides HCS slots requires a state match to draw those federal slots down.
And that's what we're waiting for.
And the state allocates a limited amount of state general revenue for those slots on a biennial basis. So we have about 13,000 people on that interest list in Harris County right now. It's something like 70, 80,000 statewide. And that's why it's 11, 12 years before people move up. So it's when they got placed on the list and when the slots come up. So it's state match that's limiting that.
Okay, Sarah Tolles.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today, giving up some of your weekend time to listen to us, you're the people. First, I want to tell you a little bit about my daughter, Luann, who is 47 years old, and she has Down syndrome. After hearing Havilah, I'm not sure whether Havilah or Luann is the greatest Aggie fan. There'd probably be a competition for that because she very much is. Her brother went to A&M and has been the Aggie fan. I want to tell you a little bit about her, and then I want to ask you to do something to change things in Texas. Luann was born in 1969 to some very naive parents. I have never, grew up in a small town in Alabama, I have never seen a person with this kind of disability ever, knew nothing about it. So I had a very steep learning curve. Parents are just thrust into this all of a sudden when a child is born, especially if the diagnosis comes at birth, as ours did. But essentially, we raised Luann just like we did our 3-year-old son at the time, in the community with the services that were available. She went to public school. She's had interaction with non-disabled students, had good family support and community friends. She has the HCS waiver services. She got those when she was 30. So from the time that she left school at age 22 to 30, she had nothing. So there were 8 years in there that were, let's just call it a no man's land. But now she has the services. She has a job and works in a school cafeteria. She has held that job for 11 years. She has just started her 12th year, and she makes $11 an hour. So she's very happy with that. She lives with 3 non-disabled ladies and 4 dogs. And she loves the dogs, I think, better than the ladies. She would tell you that she has a good life. And if she could, she would be here today speaking for herself. But she is in College Station right now at a Special Olympics tournament. So I'm here to speak for her. And I will not do as good a job as she would do in telling you about her life. But I want to share just one little story that will illustrate how important jobs are to people with intellectual disability. So she's held her job for 11 years, and this past spring, when the flooding occurred and schools were closed for a few days and she couldn't go to work, she called me on the phone one day and she said, "Mom, I'm mad at the news people." And I said, "Why?" She said, "They keep saying school is closed." And I said, "Well, it's not the news people that are saying that. The schools can't get the school buses in the subdivisions because of flooding. They can't bring the children to school." And she said, "Well, I need to work. I need to go to work." And she said, "I'm bored." I said, "Well, you could come over and stay 2 or 3 days while school's closed," because it was closed about a week. So you can stay a few days with your dad and me. And she said, "No, that's okay. I'm depressed enough already." So that tells you a little bit about her personality and the wit that she has. She amazes us and she is a hilarious person because she comes up with the funniest things all the time. But that's a little bit about her. And her life, she would tell you that she's got a good life. She told us after she moved out of our house and had lived there for a while, she said, I have to have my own life. And she made it very clear when she came back to visit us that it was just a visit and that she would go back to her home. But now I would like to ask you, who are the policymakers to be very diligent in finding the best, most humane and cost-effective way to serve people with developmental disabilities? In my opinion, that would be offering community supports and getting away from the institutions that we have now. The 13 state centers, most of which used to be called state schools, are consuming a vast amount of the funding available. You could serve 4 to 5 people for every one that's in an institution. And living in the community with, let's say, regular people and having the experiences that my daughter has had would be so much better for the person. The young man that talked about the 25 cents an hour for working in the workshop in the state school is just archaic in the way to deliver services. And I firmly believe that Texas needs to join the 21st century. Most states have closed all of their state institutions. They have none. And we still have 3,000 people in the state schools, and it takes, about $16 million to serve 3,000 people. I have 69,600 million. 69,600,000 was the kind of math I came up with when I multiplied the cost per individual by the number of individuals being served. That funding really needs to be brought back to the community. The people that are in there can be served in the community, as well as those that you've heard about today who are living in the community. There is no waiting list to get into state school. No waiting list. But yet, people are willing to wait 12 years to get services in the community because that is the value they place on community services. So anyway, I would ask you to appropriate additional funding and to reduce the waiting list and to change that funding stream from an institutional bias to community services. And I ask you, again, to provide the opportunity to make everyone have the good life that Luann says she has. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Miss Melanie Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for taking time. I know you're all busy, you're taking time away from your family, and we sincerely appreciate you here today to hear what we have to say. And thank you to Greg for being just an amazing advocate for people that so many times have no voice. When it's speech is severely delayed, but yet I think you can tell he wants to be heard. He wants to have opportunities. So thank you so much. You're tall? You feel tall up here? He's 10. He's pretty small, but he says being up here, being heard makes him feel very tall. So thank you so much, Pat. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, to our Friends of Feeling Network for making this opportunity today. My name is Melanie Duncan. I live in Cypress, Texas, located in Harris County. My husband and I have 3 children. Our oldest son is 14. Our middle son is Landon. He has Down syndrome. And our youngest daughter is 3. I ask you to please consider consolidating, moving towards the closure of the institution or the state-supported living centers in Texas. There are still 13. Many are very old, not facilities you would ever want a loved one living in. And they can be consolidated. Just millions of dollars can therefore be freed up to provide these community services that these people are desperately looking for. The state-supported living centers take 40% of the funds available for people with intellectual disabilities, and yet it only serves 0.2% of the population of those with IDD. That doesn't make sense. It's, fiscally, and there are so many people in there that probably could, be better served in the community, but their families just don't know what else to do. They're on these long wait lists, and they get frustrated, and so if they put them in a community institution, they know they'll get all these services, no wait list. People who come from other states to Texas, they immediately get a place that costs over $100,000 per person, over $10,000 a month, 9,000 something per month to live in an institution, whereas for like a tenth of that, we could, provide them with support so they can stay at home, so they could live in other, group supported systems, group homes, and get community service for so much less, and yet lead much more meaningful lives for much less, saving taxpayers and, staying with their families and, providing better, all the research shows, institutions. I mean, it's just, you think 50 years ago that's where people, placed their children. They didn't even keep them at home. And that's not the best place for them or their families. Lane was born with a detached esophagus, 2 heart defects, and Down syndrome. He spent nearly 6 months of his first year in the hospital, undergoing multiple major surgeries, weeks on life support, and barely surviving at times. His hospital bills totaled nearly $1 million. Am I doing something wrong? Sorry, I felt like maybe it's me. It was his bills were over $1 million the first year. We very literally wondered. It was at that time. Our insurance did have lifetime max, and we didn't know what are we going to do after that. How do we continue to survive as a family and do what's necessary for him? And thank God we did have the resources we did. Many families would not be able to, even pay the co-pays that we encountered. When he was 2 years, thankfully, when he was a year old, I think I just had a loud voice, he started to thrive. Could actually move around and interact with those around him much more. So he began to pursue therapies and early education interventions. Things that still, today, I have a friend in the audience, her daughter, major heart defects. And she can't get physical therapists to come to the house. ECI is a given. There's no wait list for ECI. But yet, because there's been so many budget cuts, they don't even have a physical therapist available to come. And I know she's going to fight. She's going to do something to get that changed. But it's sad. There's a lot of parents that just say, well, we signed up, it didn't happen, and they won't. And their child will not be doing as well. Because as a community, we're not meeting their needs. When Lena was 2 years old, I was told, learned about, class and the HCS wait list. And of course, my friend said, you have to do this now. Because otherwise, when he gets, out of high school, or when you desperately need it, that's what happens. People, they are told about these programs early on. No one at school, no doctors tell you about these programs. And then all of a sudden, your child needs it and it's not there. So you have to sign up when you don't even know what's going on around you or what you're going to need, just hoping that it might be there when you finally need it. So when he was 2 years old, I put him on class and HCS wait list. Those wait lists are about 13 years right now. We are on both of those wait lists. I've never received a phone call. We're still many years away from hoping that he could be provided with some services. However, literally, it was a friend of a friend. I couldn't even tell you this person's name. But they said, have you heard of a Rider 28? It's a waiver program through the medically dependent child program. And because he does have such great, medically fragile health needs, he could maybe qualify. Again, never heard of this from anyone. Literally, he spent, 6 months of his first year in the hospital. We saw social workers. We saw people from Child Life. All these people. No one ever told me about these waivers that could basically jump the wait list. So we didn't have to wait for 13 years, hoping that maybe we could get something. So I took my child, who was very sick at the time, often in the hospital, nearly dying sometimes from a bout of pneumonia or whatever would come his way. He's very excited to be here and he wants to dab. But I want you to sit down so they can hear your words, Landon. I want you to sit down into our room. Well, I sat in the room just hoping that when I left, would he get the services that he qualifies for, that we would have never got. So it took weeks to even contact the people at Medicaid, I would drive home from school and I'd spend an hour every day on hold, waiting for someone to answer my call from Medicaid. They'd tell me I didn't have the right number, send me someone else. Literally for weeks, it took me to actually get the right forms and talk to the right people to find out how to get this Rider 28, this mystery that had just been revealed to me. We were very lucky. After they looked at our medical paperwork and that we chose to stay in the nursing home and that he actually qualifies to be in a nursing home. And so when they considered everything, they decided that we could, get the Rider 28, and we jumped the list. We're lucky. My friends are not as lucky. My friends don't have that option. So just like we did before we had this special waiver for Medicaid, we paid hundreds of dollars every week for his prescriptions in copay. This is in addition to our private insurance. Hundreds of dollars every week for his prescriptions. Hundreds of dollars every week because we wanted to make sure he had speech, physical, and occupational therapy. I mean, music and some of that other, those were really awesome, but you could basically have to pick and choose. I mean, there was only so much money and time to provide what we could. But we did that. There's so many families throughout Texas, they don't even have that. They don't have the means to afford to pay that out of pocket, so they just don't get it. So right now, if I was just waiting on services provided by the state, which of course we all pay taxes to, we'd be getting none of that covered at all. So I would just like to please ask you that for people throughout Texas, families with children with intellectual disabilities, if they can't qualify yet because they haven't jumped the waiting list, their families are, maybe they're going to send them into a nursing home facility because it's easier. It's certainly cheaper for them, much more expensive for us. So families are separated or sent into poverty. I mean, literally, you have to, what are we going to do? Are we going to get, therapies or are we going to pay rent? And that's a very real decision families have to decide. We are very lucky. We do not take what he receives for granted at all. There are over 114,000 children and adults with disabilities waiting to receive services that they lawfully qualify for. You feel tall? And you want to play baseball. As soon as we're done, you get to do these things. Too many people are not receiving the proper preventative health care because their families cannot afford it, and they are foregoing therapies that could greatly enrich their lives because they just don't have the money. And the thing is, by law, their children do qualify. It's just this money is being sent to keep people in institutions at a much higher rate instead of keeping them with their family who desperately want to care for them and want to, help them have a better, higher quality of life. There's a nationwide shift from institution to community-based services. Nationally, more than 190 of the 354 state-supported living centers have closed since 1960s. But Texas has been very slow to adapt. We still have the 13. Many are less than half filled. But because they still have these large facilities that have to be cleaned, staffed, cared for, we are paying too much money for the ones we have. And many of those people could be better served elsewhere. If our state can work together to better allocate funds with a focus on early intervention, the need for emergency services or interventions like the Rider 28 would drastically decrease. It costs approximately 4 times as much to receive services in a state-supported living center versus in the community. I mean, it basically encourages parents to take that route. And we're all paying the price for it. And the people in this room not getting services are paying the price for that. because the system's not set up properly. Today, Texas is 50th in the country for spending for persons with a disability. There needs to be an overhaul of the budget. They focus on early interventions, respite, and services within the community to improve the quality of life for people with an intellectual disability and a family. As a result, there will be less dependence on expensive, antiquated, state-run facilities. We must change this broken system in our state in order to provide a better future for all. Thank you so much for your thoughtful consideration.
Hey everybody, we're real fortunate. State Representative Garnet Coleman's here. I've been reporting for 30 years, and for much of that, he has been a tireless voice raging against what has happened to our community, and I want to thank you. You don't stop.
You don't want me to get started. I sound angrier than her.
I'd like to call up Mr. Christopher Diaz. And this is our last speaker. We appreciate it. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
I wish I had more time. I could spend about 8 hours talking about everything that we deal with every day. And I'm thankful for your time, but I'm also thankful for everybody else's time that's here. And you guys did an amazing, amazing speech. I'm so proud of you guys. How are you? Thank you very much. I'll do my best, I promise.
I'm sorry, can you identify your position?
My position, I'm a parent
Okay.
and an advocate for my son who's autistic. He's 4 years old and he's nonverbal. And I've been on, I just want to say a special thank you to Greg Rugen also for having my story on Fox News 6 times this past couple months, and as well as the other families that were victimized over at James Randolph Elementary School out in Katy ISD. And I know this is not the most comfortable topic to talk about. Lord knows that the last thing I want to be doing on a Saturday is to be here speaking about a traumatic event that happened with my child when I could be at home playing the ukulele, hoping my son would speak. But that's neither here nor there. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the notes that are being taken down. That's important to know that we are being heard and it's being detailed, that for you all to be able to move this information forward. Speaking honestly, I'm new to Houston. I've been in Guatemala, been in Puerto Rico. I recently transferred here. My wife's recovering from cancer. We're here for my son who's also epileptic and autism. And I specifically moved to Katy ISD for their special education programs. I also want to say before I start that I am thankful that there are good teachers out there. I do believe in the institutions that we have. They do an amazing, amazing job in the school districts and also with all the private therapies that we have. I would love to go sailing or horseback riding or hiking or camping on the weekends, but our time is dedicated to our son's forward progression and his therapies of speech and occupational therapy and hopes that maybe one day he'll be able to grab a pencil to write a speech, and hopefully one day that he'll be able to be as poised as these young gentlemen were today. It was amazing. I'd like to start and say the Americans with Disabilities was signed into law in 1990. Are you all familiar with that act? That the disabilities includes mental, physical, and medical conditions. My son's on the autism spectrum, so he falls into that, and he's considered a protected class by the federal government. And I'm sure you all are also familiar with the FAPE, the Free Appropriate Public Education. This is all new to me. My son's 4, so I'm in a microwave, and I look at all the trailblazers in the audience. Fabulous job that they've done to speak to representatives who make the changes to make our lives a little bit more manageable. Our children are smart, they're teachable, they're employable, and they are and can be productive citizens in our great state of Texas and the United States of America. Our world was turned upside down on June 8th this year when we were notified by school administration that there was an incident between our son's teacher, who is a PPCD teacher, and in a very long story, short, within 8 hours, that notification of a reckless handling of my child, the investigation was terminated. It was over. I was never spoken to. My child was never interviewed. Later turns out no witnesses were interviewed by the police. That the teacher was never spoken to by any entity. I find that disturbing, to say the least. One of the problems, and I'm going to try to address this as problem and solution. I later found out that the teacher was accused of the same reckless handling of children in another school district. So one of the problems that I've come to learn, that I don't know if you can address this or not, is the vetting issue. If a teacher is determined, no matter how small the complaint, that complaint needs to be documented. And it needs to be written down, and it needs to be put into a file, and then that file needs to follow that teacher from one school district to another, no matter how small, period. If there is an issue, it needs to be investigated, but focusing on those type of infractions. I don't feel, and maybe you can help us, there's a lot of power in school districts when it comes to discretion. What they feel that is acceptable, what they feel is not acceptable, how they want to label infractions, how they want to categorize things. And I think that there should be no discretion when it comes to an accusation of violence towards a child. And violence, what I mean by that is grabbing somebody, jerking them, twisting their heads, pulling their hair, pinching them, striking them, pushing them to the ground. In our experience, we've learned that those things can be called and considered inappropriate teaching methods. I have to disagree. That would be similar to saying that you could go get drunk and you can go drive. That's a very inappropriate driving technique. It's also against the law as drunk driving. If any one of us in this room did any of those type of actions, grabbing and jerking and twisting and hair pulling, we did that to anybody else, we would be in jail. We would have an arrest charge. A full investigation would be conducted. Our children are a protected class. Our children deserve the exact same rights that were afforded, specifically with personal safety. Specifically towards, for example, the vetting of the teachers that come into the class to teach these vulnerable children who cannot speak for themselves. Period. One of the solutions with regards to vetting after a teacher's hired for special education, and I don't know if you can help me or not, But I would love to see some sort of mentoring program for new teachers that are coming and being hired for this difficult job. It's hard. As a parent, I have one child. He runs me ragged. I cannot even imagine. And we're potty training right now. And any help you guys have, please help me out. This is tough. But he runs me ragged. I cannot even imagine 10 children and trying to teach them. It's frustrating. It is frustrating. But we have to have some sort of observers in there mentoring these people, these teachers. Just because you took a 40-hour accredited class doesn't mean that maybe your temperament isn't the best. We need to have somebody who's been in there, who's dealt with it, who can identify possible problem individuals. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be in the school. Maybe they just shouldn't be with special needs children. You know, we don't want to lose everybody, because I do believe that there are good people in the system. If people are determined that they don't have the temperament, they need to be removed swiftly. Why? Because bad things can happen. Grabbing, jerking, pulling, things such as that. I believe that all complaints need to be reported. Reported to the appropriate authorities under the Texas Penal Code within 48 hours. I previously discussed discretion of the school districts. There's a lot there. I don't think that they have the discretion to supersede Texas law for them to conduct their own inquiries on suspected criminal allegations of abuse of our kids. If something happens, it needs to be reported. Reported to the agencies who have the training, that have the ongoing training of the most modern techniques to conduct a proper investigation. I believe that in the school systems, I think very serious crimes needs to be, in my experience, police departments that are report to the superintendent, I think there's a vested interest that they maintain, they're looking after the school's reputation versus the well-being of our children. With regards to abuse, which I found is a problem, I think it needs to be an independent party looking into it that does not care about politics. Now, I wouldn't be as naive to believe that would never exist, the concept of politics. When I went to every police organization out there, I was advised of jurisdiction and politics. I found that a little disturbing. But thanks to Greg Grugan, we're at a point where the Texas Rangers are looking into our situation. And I'm thankful for Fox News and Greg Grugan's work. But how sad is it that I had to go publicly and go on the news 6 times to the level where the lieutenant governor had to weigh in on it? What other parents have the opportunity to do that? I'm very lucky. And I'm thankful. That should not happen. And I believe an independent jurisdiction organization that can resolve some of these issues to take out some of the impropriety there that can be perceived. I believe that the parents have a right to all the police reports. According to state law, I recently learned that children are not named in the police reports. It's not true. Okay, that's good to know, because I was advised otherwise.
You're a victim, you're entitled to police reports. You just have to ask them.
I'm glad you said that. I asked multiple occasions, and I was denied. I was not allowed the police reports. I was eventually, through an attorney, which I'm a good one, I was able to get them, but not through the Freedom of Public Information Act at all. I was advised because my son's name was not in the report, I was not entitled to it. Unfortunately. I could go on and on about that, but I think that schools need to follow Texas law. There should be no discretion or whether for them to be able to conduct their own investigation to decide whether it's abuse or it's not abuse. It needs to be reported. It needs to be reported to a third party. I don't believe in in-house investigating. I discussed a fair investigation. That means if there's a witness, you talk to them and you write it down. You get them to swear to it. If the school district has a policy to notify all the parents in reference to a case of lice in the classroom, I think the school system should also have a policy that if there's suspected child abuse in the classroom, that every parent in that classroom be notified about that. I think if there's a victim involved, whether they can speak or not, they need to be interviewed. I think the parents need to be talked to. And last, and most importantly, if there's a suspect, I think you got to talk to them. And you need to write it all down. And if there's an issue, you present it to the district attorney and let them make the decision before a grand jury. And that needs to be presented with passion, not just by running through the motions. Our children are not dismissible. They're smart and productive. And lastly, I'm finishing up right now. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I believe for the witnesses who stand up, they need to be supported and not demonized. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate in this day and age that they're being demonized. For the parents who stand up for their children, like anybody here would stand up for your own children, period. They should not be demonized either within the community. I don't know how you can help me with that. When parents speak with school officials and police, Child Protective Services, there needs to be transparency and there needs to be honesty. 100%. Thank you very much for your time. I really don't know how you can help me, but I appreciate you taking and allowing me the extra couple minutes to speak my mind here today. It really means a lot. It means a lot to all of us, and we're all advocates here. It takes a village to raise our kids, and you guys are part of it. Thank you very much.
Everybody ready to give our elected officials and appointed representatives an opportunity, if you'd like, just to say a couple of words. Representative Coleman. Should be Senator Coleman, sorry.
Well, that didn't try for that one. I've been in office a very long time. 25 years. I'm number 6 in seniority in the House, and I used to write Health and Human Services budgets in the 90s. The last time I was on the conference committee of the budget writing these policies was in 2001. If you go back and look at the budgets in the 90s up to 2001, more money was put in. We got rid of waiting lists. As much as we could, the waiver programs, we put more money in to allow there to be more slots. In some cases that you have to be eligible for a nursing home, but in other cases we just pay for additional slots. So we did that. There are things that happened that we had great advocacy within the Texas legislature for those programs. Lieutenant Governor Ratliff was very passionate when he was finance chair about these issues, and we worked extremely hard. Then 2003 came. And so I only want to say, and I won't be as blunt as I usually am, but when something happens and money goes away, it's not by accident. And quite frankly, but I am going to call one name out because his name's already been called out. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick may be, how can I put it, media savvy, but the proof's in the pudding. And so if we can't spend money on the most vulnerable and needy of our citizens, then something's wrong. So I only want to say that because you're going to say you're just a partisan Democrat. Well, yeah, I am. But when I was working with Republicans I worked with, they thought that in this circumstance, or these circumstances, CPS circumstances, there was no party. There was only compassion for the people that are served. So thanks for indulging me a little bit of that, and I promise, and I keep my promises. I promise to work on this session. I'm kind of vacillating as to whether or not I should go back on appropriations because I can't. I don't want to. But I can't be chair of county affairs. But this is what we need to do in county affairs on this. But that we have to push. And I think it's very important that you push, and I'll just stop there. And I appreciate being invited to listen. You'd be surprised. These are the same comments that I heard when I first went on the Appropriations Committee in 1993 and 1995. That's 20 years ago. So we did make progress, but then, boom, all the money was pulled out.
Thanks so much for having me here. I really enjoyed this. I definitely learned a lot. Put a lot of food for thought. So I'll just say this. One, if you have an issue that you're having trouble with the state, please contact your local state. Your state rep, your state senator. We're there to assist. We're there to help. You're a local council member. We're all there to serve you. And a lot of times I get people who are asking for help after the fact. I can't do anything once the decision's already been made and the appeals have already been rejected. Come to me before there's a problem. A lot of times you think, well, we don't want to waste your time with it. That's what we're there for. That's what we're here for. Come to us when there's a problem, not after the problem's already been dealt with. That's number one. Number two, we're going to be taking up a lot of these issues next session. One of the ones that we're going to be working on is removing the arbitrary TEA cap on special education. What you guys did here today, we should need you guys to come back to Austin next in 2017 and come testify and say how unfair that is and how many families have been affected by it. So we need your support on that.
Want to speak?
Thanks. Just want to speak on behalf of my boss, Mayor Turner. This is an issue that's very near and dear to his heart. He is a brother with ID. He's spent 25 years in the state legislature, and he's no longer there, but we'll certainly be looking for ways to be supportive of increasing services. And so we're looking forward to that and seeing how we can identify ways to support. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everyone. That was incredibly powerful. Listening to everyone's story was an incredible opportunity. It was heartfelt. I feel very impacted by all the stories that we heard, and I assure you, if elected, I will do everything in my power to try to help alleviate the problem as much as possible. Thank you again for speaking to all of us.
Well, I've heard a lot of things, and I've been through a lot of those things that I've heard from them. I wish I would have known about that Rider 28. That would have been nice. They put me through the ringer on that one. When I ran for office, my intention was, I'm going to Austin, I'm going to change this, because I cannot tell you how many times my son came home with bruises and black eyes and, beaten up in school, and nobody knew who did it or how it happened. So I went to Austin with that intention that I was going to change things for him, to make things better for him and for the rest of the people like him. And one of the biggest issues when I came out to Austin was they wanted to close down the state-run facilities. And I wanted to do that when I went to Austin. I said, I want to close them down. We serve 4 people for what they take one in the state facility. But when I visited one of the state-run facilities, I saw people that were as bad as my son, severely mentally retarded, cerebral palsy. They're not able to speak for themselves or do things for themselves. They have been abandoned by their parents, forgotten by their siblings. And so where are we going to put them? Where are they going to go? When I went to Austin, they said they had already started moving some of these special needs people out of the Austin facility, and that one of them had already been killed because he wanted to go back home. This is their home to them. So, unfortunately, I had to have a change of heart about closing down the state-run facility, because we first have to find a solution for them before we throw them out on the street. And I'm in a very tight race in my district, but I do hope to go back to Austin continue the hard work that I've started on and hopefully find a solution for those people that have been forgotten in the state-run facilities. Some of them have not been as fortunate as some of the ones that are here in this room. Thank you for having me today. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for all of you that spoke today. Your passion, your willingness to step forward and tell us your stories. I noticed a number of you said, I'm not political, I don't know how politics works. But let me tell you something, the personal is political. When we sit and hear your stories, it really impacts us. Instead of just looking at a budget line item, we can remember the faces of the people who spoke to us today. And I will tell you this, that the City of Houston and the mayor clearly realize the problems that we face in terms of providing services for you, for your loved ones. It's one of the biggest issues we have. We need to be able to get that money from the state. And the state needs to be able to understand that how we treat those of you and those that are homeless, how we educate people, is our responsibility as politicians and as representatives of you. So please keep telling your story. If you want to talk to us at City Hall every Tuesday afternoon, we have public session. You're only allowed 3 minutes, 2 minutes, or 1, but 3 minutes in front of City Council just so they can see your face, so they can hear your stories will be so meaningful. Thank you for your passion.
Thank you so much for your stories. I've been with Commissioner Raddick, as I've said, for many, many years, and as Garnet said, some of these things we've heard for the past several years, but I cannot emphasize enough, I applaud you for coming out on a Saturday and telling your story. And I understand the hardships that you face. And with that being said, as Ellen said, and others, there is nothing more powerful than your voice. I know it takes time. I know it takes
mental illness. And as we formulate our legislative agenda for the upcoming session, I will pass along your heartfelt stories. And the Harris County Commissioners Court cares about children and adults with disabilities. And we'll fight. And I appreciate your having me here today, and thank you for sharing your stories.
So for members of the audience, I want to echo a special thank you. I cannot stress how important your voices are. You need to speak out loudly, and you need to speak out often as we start moving toward the start of the 85th legislative session. To the members who are here, thank you. I felt like we were preaching to the choir. Your presence says you already get it, and I've known several of you very personally, and I know you get it. It is very important to understand what is happening in this state. And I've been very disturbed over the last several sessions where we have seen an erosion of state support in terms of actual resources for the safety net, for matching federal programs. This is not going away. And if we don't invest early and appropriately, we will pay over and over and over again as a society. You know, there's so many places where we understand in terms of medicine, early intervention, early identification can make a huge difference in reducing the severity and impact on people's lives and their families. So it is really critical for y'all who get it, for the city folks, to lend their most. And I know the mayor and what he has done, and I know Councilwoman Cohn, your support over the years. I know the commissioners and the legislative platform. We all have to speak out because we have not had the champions for the ID community in our legislature and our leadership, and we absolutely have to have those voices heard. All you have to do is survey our emergency centers and start to see how many people are showing up in those emergency centers with ID, and the emergency center docs and nurses don't know what to do and where to turn. When people get into the hospitals, where do they go? What's the next step? Because we're getting clogged up. And people, 13,000 people on a waiting list for a federal, basically, entitlement program, because we're not providing the match at the state level to draw down the waiting list faster than the number of people are being added. So we have some really critical issues: what we buy, where we buy it, how we do this. But I just want to stress this is a critical session coming up. And I would be remiss not to say to you that if we hadn't had the 1115 waiver, if we hadn't been able in Harris County to get 27 dish rep projects through the Harris Center, 3 of which address people with IDD, the crisis would have been far more intense today. But this session, we are facing some critical decisions about our willingness as a state to partner with the federal third-party reimbursement programs. And if we lose that 1115, hospitals across Texas and community services like ours are going to be devastated. So I really want to encourage, may not be politically appropriate to say this, but we have got to figure this out for Texas in this coming session. So anything you can do in your voice for folks with IDD and their families, for people with mental illness and their families. Thank you so much for being here.
That we have that money. How do we get there? That thing. These people don't know.
Home played a leadership role in assisting us to get the 1115 waiver, to get Texas to participate with the 1115 waiver. But he has been a leader with the Ohio.
And it's really important, though. It was the first time we've ever matched local money that goes into programs like IDD and the mental health programs and the 1115 waiver. And I say these things because that's the reason I called out Dan Patrick. There are people who do things. It's not just like, ooh, it happens. There are people who care and who go and do things to make change. And I want to be very clear about that, because in your advocacy, you have to know who works for you, and you have to know who just gives you lip service, and then you have to know who works against you. So, I mean, that had never been done before, where we had matched local money. We didn't even know if CMS would do it. And so I say all that to say that if I had not knocked somebody upside the head over there down the hall, they wouldn't have even done it. So I'm not bragging on myself. I'm just trying to say that there are individuals who do things. You're right. We lost the champion in Sylvester and in John Davis. And so there are challenges about what we do. But again, I don't run the state. But I do know what's important, and I do know how to do it. That's the other part, actually, knowing how to access and push for those different things. And I'm only saying that because I've been here 25 years. I'm getting near to the end of my time too. It does now.
But hopefully it will be back this session. Continue that.
Yeah, I mean, my intent obviously is to be back, but that may be it.
Hey, everybody. Chris, you have a quick question?
I do have a question. I apologize. Y'all are experts in your field. We're experts at being parents. I know you are too, sir. My question to the experts in the field who are in the political arena is, what do we do to help you fight for us?
Okay.
Outside of telling our story. We tell our stories every day.
I can
You
tell
go to a
you
restaurant,
right
you tell
now
your
what
story.
you need to do.
Tell me what to do.
Okay, who lives between the 610 loop and the Beltway? Raise your hand. Who lives past the Beltway? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm with you. But make sure that the people who represent you, both the state senator and the state house member, that you go and you tell them, you don't ask them. You go and tell them you want them to support these circumstances, and don't just give me, shake the head. I'm sad about that too, because that doesn't translate into results. That translates into sympathy, not empathy. And so when you look at the Appropriations Committee, or you look at the Senate Finance Committee, where the money things are, and then you would do Public Ed Committee and Education Committee, when you go in and you see them and you're actually one of their constituents, that's when you hold them accountable to whether or not they're supportive of your issues.
Do we hold them together accountable as an individual, or do we have to organize as a one conglomerate and then go?
You can do both.
What is the best?
Okay, I would do both. That's why organizations like ARC and others. But one of the things is you can go in, but when somebody comes into my office and they live in my district, I listen to everybody. But when they come into my office and they live in my district, it's important for me to represent everybody in the state. But also, I know when they're saying it, these are people that I have a direct responsibility to.
Okay.
So I think that's, and generally in advocacy, what organizations would do is they'll send people to the offices of their own representative or own senator so that impact occurs. But I think that the time leading up to the session, if you have an opportunity to go visit with your senator and your representative, I think it is powerful.
Because people talk about protesting, people talk about petitions, people talk about talking to their representatives, and we don't have a lot of time. So I was just curious if you could advise us. If you have a finite amount of time, this is the most effective game for what you're able to give. Okay. Yes, sir.
So I'm going to make a couple comments. One.
Yes, sir.
I think each person, each family, has to be willing to speak out, to contact, as Representative Coleman says.
Okay.
Your House members got to know you. Your senators got to know you.
And they'll talk to
your
us.
commissioner has to know you. They have to know your issues.
Okay.
You also have several major advocacy groups in this community who will pull those voices together in addition to individuals. Both are needed.
Okay.
Our state, you have to remember, our elected officials are juggling competing needs within the state of Texas. They have to become clear that our special needs populations have to get their fair share, just like roads and highways, just like criminal and juvenile justice, just like other areas of health. ID needs to get its fair share. Okay? So, but it's a struggle. So we've got to be clear that if we're in a state that says, gee whiz, we want to reduce our revenue streams, whether it's partnering with the feds or how we actually tax ourselves, there's a consequence to that.
Correct.
And so you have to be willing to kind of speak up and say, hey, we've got to be willing to pay for it. You don't pull up to the gas pump and expect somebody else to pay for your gas. So we've got to be willing to stand up and say, hey, we are going to be committed to this, okay? So we've got to get additional resources committed at the state level. It can't come at the county, it can't come at the city. It has to be at the state level. And we have to partner with the federal government where we have those waiver programs. So the first thing is just, we've got to get enough resources to start making a dent. Then the second thing is, we've got to start looking at the allocation of those resources. And Harris County consistently gets below its fair share. And we have about 18% of the state's population. And so, if you all speak out to all your state reps and all our senators, which touch Harris County, and say, hey, we need more resources, here's why, and then we want our share for Harris County, we're going to start to make a difference. We won't fix it in one session,
For sure.
but we'll start to make a difference. And let me just tell you, your passion is clear. You have to be willing to make the investment of speaking out over and over and over again. Because remember the competition. Everything else in the state is competing for those very same dollars.
For sure.
Don't let anybody tell you there's no money. There's always money.
Right. I don't think people tell us we fight society on a daily basis on judgment, etc. So we just need to know where we need to go get the gas at.
Always money. It's just a
Rainy day fund.
He really does. I mean, it's just a choice. So if Paul Bencourt is doing hearings around the state saying that we should cut all the taxes, where's the money going to come from? And Paul Bencourt wants us to spend no money. So that's the first office I would go to.
Okay. Give me his address. I'll be there tomorrow.
Oh, you can find it.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
I've got his cell phone number.
We drive to
Hey, everybody, wanted to make something very clear. The official position of the ARC of Texas is for consolidation of state schools, not complete closure. Also, I want to thank the world's greatest BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, Kelly Bivens, for being here. She's a tremendous asset for any of you lawmakers. And I have a dream that of all the times that there is chest pounding and bragging on the floor of the Texas House and the Texas Senate, that at some point we will brag, hey, we are no longer 50th, dead last in the country.
That's right.
In terms of serving our people. And so
We were when I was on.
I know that.
I just want to make clear.
Yeah, you didn't do it.
Thank you all for coming. It shows you care. And I was proud to be here to serve as your MC. I will continue to do the stories I can do. I will continue to be the best parent that I can be. And I will continue to respect warrior moms like all of you here. Okay? Thank you very much.